Okay, I'm gonna make a video as detailed as possible, but as easy as possible. So, like we were talking about scales and modes the other day, let's start off with the scale thing first, of how that all works and ties in. Obviously, I think you know because they're just patterns that are tied into each other. They can shift anywhere on the neck. Like you said that you saw a diagram that showed all the fingerings. It's like, whoa, what the heck? Well, it's easy when you take little sections of that, or like one scale at a time, and you get that under your fingers, and then you go to number 2, going from the first scale to the second scale, number 1 to number 2, and you get those two down, and then you go from like 2 to 3, because that's how I see it. I'll be like, go from 5 into 4, and then I'll sit there and pick notes out of that scale, and then I'll go into 4, it's a lot easier to do it scale by scale than it is to skip over things, but you'll get better to where you can do that later on, you know what I mean? But anyway, to start off with, everything is based on that number 1 scale, the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do scale. And you can play that anywhere, like I said. I can play it here. It has the same sound. The same do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do sound, right? So I'm going to play it in G to give you the fingering and the example and everything. So I'm going to play starting on the 3rd fret of the E string, which is G. That would be your first note, okay? And that's the root note. That's what a bass guitar would be playing if you were going to be in the Ionian mode, starting with the scale there. Anyway, so number 1 is the 3rd fret of the low E string. Number 2 note of that scale is the 5th fret of the low E string, and then the 2nd fret of the A string, the 3rd fret of the A string, the 5th fret of the A string, the 2nd fret of the D string, then you go to the 4th fret of the D string, then you go to the 5th fret of the D string, and then you go to the G string 2nd fret, 4th fret of the G string, 5th fret of the G string, and then you go to the 3rd fret of the B string, and then you go to the 5th fret of the B string, to the 2nd fret of the high E string, and then it ends on the 3rd fret of the high E string, and that gives you the whole. And I recommend starting off with small sections, like you know what I mean? Like, practice this part for like 10 minutes. Maybe this for like 10 minutes. Or whatever way you want to do it, up and down or just going up. Like, you know. So you get the pattern under your fingers really good. So then how you get the second pattern is, if you were to take that Ionian based number 1 scale, it's not actually the Ionian mode unless you're playing a note over it, like a bass note or something. But anyway, we'll just call it the number 1 scale. So if you're playing that, there's only 7 notes in the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then it's back to number 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1. So it's just moving up higher, so 7, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So if you start on the 2nd note of that shape there, and you play up to the 2nd note higher, so that is the fingering for the 2nd scale. So in other words, move that to here. But it's a different shape. You don't have the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do sound anymore starting on that note. You can't go do, re, mi. It doesn't work, you know. But here, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, re, mi, fa. So there's a different tonality there, but it's the same notes. But because you're starting there, and you're so used to hearing it starting on that one note, that's where you get the tonalities from. But there's different whole steps and half steps, so it sounds different. And so on, you can go up. That's the third scale shape. It's a completely different scale shape, so it's a different tonality than the second scale. That's why you get these different modes, and they have different sounds when you're playing them over a drone note. So, and that's why there's actually no wrong note on an instrument. It's only the way that the chords are being played along with whatever you're playing that makes it sound bad. So, like I said, if you were to take, starting off in that one, the first note here, and you go to the second note, well, that's obviously the first note of the second scale. If you move that up to here, the third note, well, that would be where your scale starts for the third position. That's the fourth of that first scale. That'd be here. So that gives you and so on. You can figure that out, but if you get the diagrams, it'll be easier for you. And that's how they run into each other. So if I was going to play in Ionian, then I could use that by going. See, I went into the second scale shape. I could go all the way up to the third and just be like, you know. So how you get the tonality now, like I said, when you're playing in that way over a drone note, we can do it on the guitar. The easiest way would be by playing an open E and then moving that first position all the way up to the high octave of the E here on the 12th fret. It's the very first fingering that I showed. Now if I hit an open E and I just pick any note out of that scale, and so obviously when you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you don't actually go to 8, you go back to 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So the same thing goes when you're trying to find those positions up the neck. You go back up to a 1 way up here, even though the 1 was way down here. So in other words, if I'm playing an Ionian here, and I shift up this way, I go to that second, well, I can go back down into the 7th position of that scale shape, because it's always follows, and once you learn the patterns, you understand what I mean. But I can go down, I can go up, I can go all the way, and I can play anywhere in Ionian mode, and this is how you hear that mode. Playing that scale shape, over an E, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to go into some of the different scale shapes. But you'll hear the tonality of how it has a certain sound. There's never a wrong note. You know, it's just you kind of know where to fall with the next note, just like you do on any scale. So it's like, I think I just hit a wrong note there, but. You know what I mean? You can sit there and play little melodies, and I'm just coming up with it on the fly, you know. Ultimately, you would sit there and learn what sounded good to you, and then learn what you were doing. Go, okay, I like that lick, and I'm gonna do that. That's how you come up with licks. So now to hear the other modes, then you take that whole patterning and shift whatever direction, or basically just over an E, it's easy to just put the 6th pattern here, and that gives me Aeolian, right? Because another thing that I should give you, if you want to write them down, is number 1 scale shape will give you the Ionian mode if played over the drone note. Number 2 scale shape would be Dorian. Number 3 scale shape would be Phrygian. Number 4 scale shape would be Lydian. Number 5 scale shape would be Mixolydian. Number 6 scale shape would be Aeolian, which is the natural minor. And the number 7 would be Locrian. And then you're back to number 1, Ionian. So it's Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. They always follow the same order: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I was to take the 6th scale shape and how you figure it out, like I showed you, or you get the, and I was to play the 6th scale shape, which has a completely different fingering pattern, it's a fret buzz on this one. But anyway, now if I was to play that over an E, it sounds sadder. Like the first one sounded happy because it's what a lot of kid songs are based on. It has a happier tone to it. This has a minor tone. So it's, and I'm just hitting any note in the scale. Then you know where to kind of fall for the next notes. If you're on one that's like a traveling note, you know that you can go up or down. And so on. So if I was to play the 4th one, like I said, was the Joe Satriani sounding one, Lydian, it has a weird sound when you're playing it without anything, the scale shape, because you're so used to hearing like a do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It sounds like, and you're like, that sounds weird. Well, that note right there, that's the weird note, is the one that gives it a cool sound when you're playing over the drone note. Whoops, I just went into the wrong scale. But anyway, that kind of gives you an idea of like why I call them moods, because it's like a different tonality. And if the 3rd one, which is Phrygian, has like a Middle Eastern sound to it, and the pattern for that is played over an E. Now you can hear how it sounds Middle Eastern, like, but I'm just going up and down the same pattern of shades. It's just what note it's played over, and it completely shifts that tonality of the notes, and it gives you all these cool modes that you can play. And like the 2nd one, Dorian, it's what Santana uses a lot. So if you're playing over a Santana tune a lot of times, and you know what key it's in, like a G or something, play that Dorian over it, and you'll start sounding like Santana right away. Like no matter where you've been, like it just comes out, and you're just like, what? No wonder Santana sounds like Santana. He just plays in Dorian all the time, or something, or like Joe Satriani and Lydian. But then you should also read about chord structure and how that is, because how I told you that you can find everything by they go up. Well, the chords follow the same thing too, because if you're going to play in a chord progression in Ionian or something, well, the number one is a major. It's always major. The number 2 is minor, so I go up to the second note of that scale. See, that'd be the second, so that'd be minor. The third one is always minor. The fourth one is major. The fifth one is a dominant. And you can hear how it goes up just like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do when I start from the beginning here. And so on. So when you're doing chord progression, this is how the chords work. And once you learn how chords are formed, they're formed out of the notes of the scale of the Ionian scale, basically. So the ones, the 3 and the 5s are what make up like a standard major scale. So that's how you get, a major chord, sorry. 1s, 3s, and 5. Because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's why you have one G that has a third here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's another one that goes. But they're all 1s, 3s, and 5 of the notes of that scale and that's why it's a major. If you were to follow the 1/3 of notes on this Dorian here, you'll get a minor every time. That's how that works. And so it has a little different tonality. Same thing with the third. So then if you're writing a progression and you were to do let's say a 2, a 5, and a 1, you'll hear a lot of like, let's do a progression in 2, 5, 1. You take that Ionian scale and be like, okay, well, I know number 2, I should play a minor there because it's minor, right? And then you're going to play a 5, so you had to find the 5. 3, 4, 5. So number 5 is dominant, so I could play a dominant here, which I know this already, but so I could play. That's a 2, 5, 1. And you play Ionian over it. Or for each chord, and that's a whole other thing, you could play whatever chord scale you get out of there for each motion of it. So basically that's the gist of that, and then I'll try and figure out some more things that can help you get a grip on the chord theory and everything. So